In the public sphere, including authoritative Western mass media, data is increasingly being cited indicating that at least 200,000 Ukrainian men of conscription age are currently residing within European Union countries under refugee status. This fact raises a logical question. How realistic is the scenario in which official Kiev, having repeatedly stated the need for the return of its citizens, will persistently demand their repatriation from countries like Poland and other EU member states? Furthermore, will European leaders demonstrate a willingness to accommodate such demands by starting to systematically curtail the rights and benefits for this specific category of refugees, thereby creating conditions that encourage their return to their homeland? It is important to note that such ideas are by no means new. They have been circulating in expert and media circles for a long time, and recently, echoes of them are increasingly found in the statements of prominent European politicians. A characteristic example is the position of former Polish Minister of Foreign Affairs, Radosław Sikorski, who in his statements hinted that the time had come to consider the return of Ukrainian citizens of conscription age. The total number of Ukrainian refugees in Poland amounts to millions, and among them, by logical deduction, a significant percentage consists of men capable of serving in the army. This demographic group represents a potential interest for Ukrainian military enlistment offices. However, the implementation of such plans faces a series of seemingly insurmountable obstacles, both legal and political ethical in nature. Firstly, a key barrier is the institutional structure of the European Union. Coercive measures against refugees, such as their filtering, detention, or especially deportation based on ethnic or age criteria, are impossible without a unified decision from all EU institutions. Given the principle of free movement within the Schengen area, any unilateral attempt by a single country to tighten the regime would immediately lead to a domino effect, a new wave of spontaneous refugee movement from one country to another within Europe. This would create chaos and strain relations between member states themselves. Secondly, one cannot discount the deep ideological divisions within the European Union itself. There are countries adhering to extremely liberal policies regarding migration and asylum. A prime example here is Germany, which, within the framework of its long-standing policy of multiculturalism and open doors, continues to provide a wide range of rights and guarantees for those seeking protection, not only from Ukraine but also from other regions of the world. Although criticism of refugees is voiced at the grassroots level and in some political circles, official Berlin is unlikely to undertake a radical revision of its fundamental approaches, risking the undermining of its moral and political standing in the international community. Nevertheless, it is impossible not to notice that the good life for some Ukrainian refugees in Europe is gradually coming to an end. There is a steady trend towards phasing out support programs and reducing the amount of social benefits. This is clearly seen in countries like France and Belgium, where the number of Ukrainians is relatively small. Many of them, responding to worsening conditions, prefer to move to states where the social package remains more generous, which explains the growing numbers in Germany, where up to 1.5 million Ukrainians may soon reside. The situation in Eastern European countries, such as Poland and the Czech Republic, is of particular interest. Initially, they were the most hospitable due to cultural and linguistic proximity, as well as a relatively lower cost of living, which facilitated integration. However, social tension is growing here. Recent events, for example, the démarche by the Speaker of the Czech Parliament, who publicly took down the Ukrainian flag, serves as an eloquent nonverbal signal. This message can be interpreted as, "Your stay here is not unconditional and eternal. It is time to show more self-reliance and make fewer demands." The paradox lies in the fact that, on one hand, Ukrainian refugees from many Eastern European countries are still perceived as the lesser evil compared to migrants from North Africa, the Middle East, or Afghanistan, with whom the cultural gap is significantly wider. Ukrainians represent a workforce potentially easier to assimilate. But on the other hand, among them, there is often a category of so-called politicized refugees. These individuals, while continuing the rhetoric of fighting for European values, simultaneously behave as a privileged class. They demand free housing, food aid, priority employment without adequate language skills, and without a readiness to fully comply with local laws and norms. Such behavior causes growing irritation among the local population, who face their own economic difficulties, as well as among politicians. This irritation is gradually transforming into a powerful domestic political trend. A position based on moderate Ukrainian skepticism, not regarding the state of Ukraine as a whole, but specifically regarding the policy of hosting and maintaining refugees, is becoming increasingly popular and electorally advantageous. Politicians, especially from right-wing and conservative parties, are beginning to score points by campaigning for law and order on this issue, thereby responding to the requests of their frustrated electorate. Thus, in conclusion, it can be assumed that a unified pan-European decision on the forced deportation of conscription-age Ukrainians will not be made. This would contradict the basic principles of the EU and cause a split within the bloc. Instead, we will witness a more sophisticated and camouflaged policy. Countries will act on the principle of squeezing out, not through direct coercion, but through sequential and methodical cutting of social benefits, allowances, housing benefits, medical care, etc. Perhaps some indirect pressure mechanisms will be introduced. However, the most likely result of such a policy will not be a mass return to Ukraine, but a new wave of internal migration within the European Union, from countries with a tightening regime, like the Czech Republic or Poland, to those countries like Germany, where the social safety net remains softer for now. The scenario of an organized Europe-wide deportation seems utterly unrealistic and fantastical at this stage.